It's time for the Cybersecurity News Bite with Jim Guckin.
Cybersecurity News Bite, episode number 45 for February 13th, 2023. TA-866 threat group selectively targets U.S. and German organizations. 4,000 women's health patient data breach. How not to handle incidents. VMS vendors silent over 0 days. And Pepsi Bottling Ventures suffers data breach after a malware attack. For our first story this week, it's similar to one we've talked about for a bunch of things. It is a threat group out there called TA-866, and right now they're currently attacking both U.S. and German organizations. So what does that attack generally look like? And it looks like what we've talked about for a lot of different attacks out there that we talk about every week, which is a phishing email. The attack begins with a phishing email sent to the victim that uses thread hijacking and contains a PDF document which is laden with malicious URLs and Microsoft Publisher attachments, so .pub, with malicious macros that'll run and URLs that will point to other .pub files. Now, when the URL is clicked or the macro inside the document is executed, depending on how they do it, the victim system gets compromised and it begins the chain of events that eventually compromise the system. Right now, it downloads a custom malware called Screenshotter and Wasabi Seed. Screenshotter, I'm pretty sure we know what that one does. And the idea is to be able to get information on that machine. The malware Screenshotter obviously steals screenshots and Active Directory domain-related information from the victim's machine, sends it to the attacker. This is all so that they can help understand the best way of pushing forward. Now, after scanning the details that it gets from these malware, it pretty much figures out how to attack. Right now, mostly it's going after a program called AHKBot and Ramadathi's Stealer in some cases to get more information or to further embed itself or pivot to another attack. So, what can you do to look out for this kind of attack? You know, because they're just attacking a whole wide range of organizations. So how can you protect yourself from this? So they tend not to attack obviously on normal U.S. business time. So you want to find some unusual activity that would make sense for, you know, if you're doing UTC time, either UTC +2 or UTC +3. Those seem to be the time zones in which they are possibly operating in, or at least the timetables that they are using when they're doing these attacks. Another one, which should be no surprise, is they're using the Russian language for variable names and comments in the malware code. This tends to lead towards a Russian-speaking cyber gang. Doesn't necessarily mean it, but it is leaning towards that direction. And the interesting thing is why they are using all these bots that we're talking about. A lot of this is still a manual intervention. So it's not like the bots just do everything and they just kind of leave it there. There is someone actively kind of instructing the bots on how to go forward. So it's kind of a semi-dangerous situation to be in because, you know, it's not like a one-size-fits-all kind of attack. There's someone who's kind of going, all right, well, for this machine in this environment, I'm going to use this particular tool. Now it comes to your critics of why are they attacking? Well, as far as people can see, obviously this group in this space is fairly new for most non-technical. The proof point, who's the one who discovered them and gave them their name, started seeing emails around October, and that's when they got their own classification as TA-88 or TA-866. And their belief is that this group totally operates on financial gain. They want you to pay them for systems or data that they exfil out of your environment. Now, I would say that there are some rumblings out there that they have some espionage they're doing as well, corporate espionage. But it kind of goes along that same line of it being a financially motivated kind of attack, because obviously, if they're after your protected information, your patented information, your business processes, then most likely what they are going for is to sell that to probably a competitor of yours. So it's really important to kind of really watch out for that kind of that attack. And if you have intellectual property, you do everything you can to safeguard it so that, not everyone on the network should have access to it. And honestly, it should be a separate login than information for your regular network. As I said, it's been roughly attributed to Russia, though attribution kind of can be hit or miss sometimes. We do know they're using the Cyrillic alphabet, which is the one that Russia uses. And they're, like I said, the UTC times that they're operating on would tend to lead you to believe, because it's like 9 to 5 in Russia, the UTC 2 and 3. And being that there is an embargo right now on that, they probably do need some money to help fund things. So this is a perfect time for Russian hackers to kind of really, push what it is. Plus, I'm just saying, too, the U.S. and Germany have given support in the war between Ukraine and Russia. So is it really outside of the norm to say that, this could be a targeted retribution? Most likely, in my opinion, I have no facts to back that up. And I'm sure they would deny it, but it would make sense to target and create a little bit of chaos. So really make sure your users are aware of phishing and that they know how to report it to you, that they are vigilant on this, and then use your tools to kind of scan for these kind of, Cyrillic alphabet, especially if you're a U.S. or German state who may not use those kind of languages in your everyday business needs. Having a alert for the Cyrillic alphabet may be a good thing, because maybe you might catch the early stages of that malware going through the system. Now, next is a story that I find very interesting, because we've talked about it a little bit in the past, which is, the kind of change in tactic for some malicious actors out there, not just to get your data, but also to destroy your data. And this is kind of the next story, why there's no evidence right now that they have exfiltrated the data, meaning taken it out of the system. They have destroyed the data, which is very interesting. So the story takes place at Wentworth Douglas Hospital, which is in New Hampshire. It's part of Garrison Women's Health, which is a subsection of that hospital. And back on February 10th, they had pretty much found out that 4,158 data points were destroyed. They are not able to be recovered. There was no evidence shown that this data was taken. It was just destroyed. But if you think about it, it's kind of scary, because the lost data included medical and or treatment information such as visits, procedures, tests. Think about going through a test and then having to go, oh, well, we lost it. Medical information, or medical record number, diagnosis, medical history, genetic information, and various types of assessments, imaging, and results. They also lost some coding claims and insurance payment information for services they've done, as well as scheduling information for upcoming appointments. So, we all love to call our doctor to find out when our appointments are. So imagine having to do that again because the appointment you had no longer exists on the record. So I can imagine they're trying to scramble to that. So all this data was hosted by a Global Networks Systems Group, which is a hosting provider. As I said, the news broke on February 10th, but the issue itself first was noticed by Global Network Systems back on December 12th. And they're saying that the data compromised was anything from April 29th, 2022 to December 12th, 2022. And this data was the subject to any of the malicious actors' activity. Now, one of the things that kind of scares me from this is there no reliable backup from pre that time? And I know backup tends to be on usually a lot of organizations use it on a short term. You know, you back up weekly or daily, weekly, monthly in some cases. But this goes to show you there is a good case for backups longer than that. No, granted, it would have sucked. It would have totally sucked to be a technician to have to go through, restore all these, or comb through these backups and try to restore differential data between them all, which is data that's not the same between them. You end up recovering some files that you probably don't need. You probably spend way too much time going through this. But, I mean, if you think about it, that's a very large chunk of time in which you cannot recover this data. And this is patient data. This is stuff that you have done for them. These are services. These are payments. All this stuff is going to be a nightmare for Garrison Women's Health. Because it's something that they're going to take a while to have to recover from. And there's going to be... This is not something that's easy to do. If you were seen in that time, which, you know, most people may see a doctor yearly, bi-yearly, whatever you want to do, that appointment information is gone. Those notes could be gone. And it kind of sounds like from the news is reporting on this, that it may not necessarily be something that they could say, look, it's not all data in this time frame, but a lot of things in that time frame we can't rely upon. So they're going to have to go out to their third parties and try to reconcile this data anyway, where a backup may have, I guess, somewhat stop the embarrassment from having to go out and go, oh, well, we really messed this up. So, I mean, we really need someone's help to do this. But it's important to understand that health data can be really... Imagine there being a very key... Well, I guess if it's an important test, you probably are hearing about it before the end of the event. But I'm just putting it out there. Like, to me, it terrifies me to have medical data disappear or be unavailable when you need it. Because you're talking about someone's health. And, you know, someone might be looking back to that and then not see that information. But as I said, the interesting thing about this attack was there was no data at this point that shows any of the data was taken out of the system, was used for anything else. It was just destroyed, which either means, one, it was probably someone who was just playing around for the first time, who's getting into that, you know, hacking lifestyle and just was like, hey, let me see if I can destroy this data. Or, you know, it would have to be like a very targeted attack, which I just can't imagine against women's health data, other than just to target them to cause the chaos that this is going to bring in their environment. Now, from a business perspective, the thing that you have to remember is they haven't said how this breach actually occurred. I'm going to always default to probably a phishing email that compromised an account and they were able to pivot. That's just conjecture on my part. But the key thing here is no backup that they can fall back on this data for. And you're losing a lot. And honestly, you're probably going to lose some level of credibility with your customers, your patients here, where, you know, we never backed your data up for that period of time. We're not sure, or there's not a reliable backup. Like that was my first thought reading this is how do you not have a reliable tested backup? And if you're not testing it at least every 6 months, which would cover this case, then what are you really doing? You don't have a backup. You may think you have something that acts like a backup, but it's not a backup. You really do need to have it tested on a regular basis, and this is why. Because, you know, and granted, you may think, you know, 4,100, data records destroyed, not a huge thing. But for the people impacted, I guarantee you they probably think it would be. Now, when I talk about these stories, more often than not, a lot of people go, well, these are just smaller companies that may not be prepared, or it's a company I've never heard of, so why do I have to worry about this? Well, this next story is for you. Pepsi Bottling Ventures LLC, which is the largest bottler of Pepsi Cola beverages in the United States, well, was hit with a malware attack. And Pepsi Bottling Ventures LLC manufactures, sells, and distributes all of the popular Pepsi brands. It operates 18 bottling facilities across North and South Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. So it's a huge organization, and Pepsi's the name we know. So, once again, initially the breach occurred back in December of last year, December 23rd. So, again, close to the holiday time, which is always what I tell you is try to be vigilant around major holidays, especially around Christmas and New Year's, where your staffing may not be the levels that it normally is, and honestly, the hackers are expecting that. Unfortunately, they didn't discover this breach until January 10th, which is 18 days later. And the last known date of the hacker being in the system was January 19th. So it happened on the 23rd of December. 18 days later, they caught it on January 10th. And then it took them 9 more days to verify this person was out of their systems. So they didn't see any more activity from the hacker at that point. So that's and I mention this not because I think Pepsi Bottling Ventures have done anything wrong. This is what it really takes. Like, sometimes you want to act quickly. You want to shut them out of the system. And they have backdoors or trip wires or stuff like that gets them back in. It can be hard. So I don't blame them for this period of time. But I emphasize it just to show you what an attack can really look like and how long you can have to suffer with it. How long it can be there before you even detect it. So these hackers installed malware and downloaded certain information contained on the IT systems. That's all we know from the way the attack happened. So, what did these IT systems have on them? Well, full name, home address, financial account information, including password, PINs, and access numbers, state and federal government-issued ID, such as driver's license, ID cards, social security numbers, passport information, digital signatures, and information related to benefits and employee data, so like health insurance claims and stuff like that. So this shows you, when you breach like an IT system or an HR system, this is the kind of data that sits on for every employee in your organization. Once again, Pepsi Bottling Ventures is a big organization. So the fallout from this, from a user data standpoint, is going to be huge. And as I said, not only do they have social security numbers, but they have every other piece of information to open fraudulent credit cards. I know your name, I know your address, I know, or I have a copy of your ID from your state or your passport information. And even if a signature, I can even forward your signature. Like this is something that is just dangerous, and it scares me to think about having this stuff. Now, Pepsi Bottling Ventures did a good thing. They're continuing to be hyper vigilant in monitoring post breach. They fixed the security vulnerabilities that they found that the hackers exploited to come in. They did one thing which I love, but it's usually a pain in the butt, which is they reset every company password. And I've been through a couple of situations where you've had to do it. If you're not positive that an attacker is out of your system, it sucks for your help desk. It sucks for your desktop support people because they get inundated with things they can't log into, but you force a password reset. And once again, they're working with local state and federal law enforcement agencies to kind of track and find out who did this. But even in the end, and this is kind of the downside of being a security professional, even if they catch the person who did this, which would be absolutely great, that damage is done. It's out there. There's nothing you can do to recover that data. They probably sold it, or it's on some dark web website immediately after it's done. So you can punish the person, but you can never put the genie back in the bottle, which is why it's so important to focus on prevention of these things, to be able to detect them pretty quick and respond pretty quick. We don't know why it took 18 days for the Pepsi team. My assumption being, and just knowing working from a lot of organizations, there probably wasn't a lot of staff from the 23rd on, probably into the 2nd or 3rd. So, you get back, you want to hope it gets caught in that first week, but maybe, projects or something that comes up, or there's a lot of reasons why it might extend to those 18 days. the 9 days to fully make sure they route the system. I get that can be difficult, and if you want to ensure that you're safe, it takes time. But prevention is probably the biggest key, and why we don't know how the initial breach was in place, because they said that they fixed security measures that were in place. I'm wondering if this was not your typical phishing campaign, or maybe it was a phishing campaign and there was a hole in the way the authentication worked. Maybe it was they didn't use MFA. These are all things that, why we don't know, could lead to this kind of attack. And these are things that they easily fix. If MFA is not turned on all your accounts, now's a good time to do it. But remember, prevention is a lot better than turning around afterwards and trying to figure out how to fix it. Now, for the final story this week, is one that goes into my how not to handle an incident. And this is because we're talking about a document management system, also called DMS. Well, there is a vulnerability that has been identified, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but there's a reason why we say this is not the way to deal with it. So the first story starts with Todd Beardsley, who is the director of research at Rapid7. He put a blog article listing some major vulnerabilities in the MDS systems. And he calls out some, in particular, OnlyOffice, OpenKM, Logical Doc, and Mayan. And they're not great. So, the first one we talk about here is the OnlyOffice one, which is tracked as CVE 2022-47-412. It impacts versions of OnlyOffice from 0 to 12.1.0.1760, and it has a stored cross-site scripting bug. So if exploited, an attacker can pretty much ensure that a malicious document is to be exploited. They have to have a malicious document which gets saved to the document management system and indexed. Once this malicious document is indexed, it steals session cookies. It can create new and privileged accounts, or perform a browser session hook in which they can use to secure access to other stored documents on the system. So very dangerous, because this is not based on just uploading the document. It's actually when the system itself scans the document and then it executes malicious code, which can be very scary. The others, major vulnerabilities, CVE 2022-47-413 and CVE 2022-47-414. These are based on the OpenKM document management system. This impacts version 6.3.12. Once again, it's a cross-site scripting bug that requires the victim to save the malicious document. So this isn't one that they can actually just do. But once again, same kind of thing. They have a malicious document. Oh, yeah, hey, Jane, can you upload this document to the document management system for me? Whatever, however the fisher's going. I'm not a great fisher, but if I was, that would be what I would do. And once again, once it kind of the malicious document's up there, that's when the bad stuff starts to happen. Now, the good thing about this one is the attacker has to have authenticated access to the OpenKM console. So this is not necessarily as bad as the last one, but still kind of bad. But if they can get access to the console, they can use the stored cross-site scripting security flaw to reach the document's note function if you keep notes on your documents. The next bad one, Logical Doc, which is tracked as CVE 2022-47-416, once again is a cross-site scripting bug that is in their in-app chat system. Now, the good thing about this is Logical Doc has a couple different versions. This only applies to the enterprise version, so that's dangerous. There's also another one with Logical Doc, a CVE 2022-47-415, 2022-47-417, and 22, 47, 4, 18. So 15, 17, and 18. This is in the Community Edition and the Enterprise Edition from version 8.7.3 and 8.8.2 respectively. Once again, these are all cross-site scripting, which allows a malicious document to take control of your stuff. Now, here's where the thing gets bad. Rapid7 has reached out to all these vendors and said, hey, look, we have found this vulnerability. We're going to disclose it, but we want to give you adequate time to deal with it first. And as you can tell, the fact that we're here, they did not. There was no response. There's been no patching that we've seen to identify these 0 days. And now I don't even know if there's a word for worse than a 0 day, because the 0 day has passed. The unpatched vulnerability is out there, and now we are several days past that. And the information is out there. So if you have one of these systems, take a look at the CVE is associated with it. You can always go to our website to get more information and to find the exact CVE numbers that apply to you, and take any steps you can to mitigate your stuff on this. But it's not great that these document management systems, which a lot of companies rely upon to keep all their documents safe, that they're just unpatched and we're not getting any response from the vendors. I'm hoping the vendors in the back end are scrambling to get this fixed, but well, we won't know until we see it. Thanks everyone for listening to the Cybersecurity News Bite. Once again, I am Jim Guckin. You can find more information on cybersecurity.newsbite.com or more information about me at jimguckin.com. You can find all of our show notes on our website, the Cybersecurity News Bites website. And make sure you stay safe online, and we'll talk again next week.
You've been listening to the Cybersecurity News Bite with Jim Guckin. Learn more about our show at cybersecurity.newsbite.com.